Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. The best part about being at the center of the global currency reset is working with the people who contact me and, out of the goodness of their hearts, help in fighting the corruption. The two interviews in today's show were taped on the road on May 15th and 16th in Old Huntington High School in West Virginia and in Louisville, Kentucky. We're having Betsy Malone, whom we met on the November 3rd segment, back again. You will also meet Nick Blaine, who told me about the chronologia discipline that is at Moscow State University. Nick's five greats uncle was William H. Cabell, who was the governor of Virginia at the turn of the 19th century, and Cabell County was named after him. Nick is a composer and is also a teacher of piano, violin, voice, and Latin. I met Nick's mother during a youth concert and conducted the interview in the Old Huntington, West Virginia Orchestra Room. Our backdrop is a xylophone. Occasionally, you hear the plumbing of that beautiful old building in the background. Hello, this is Karen Hudis, and I'm going to introduce Nick Blaine to you. We're sitting in Cabell County, West Virginia, and Nick is the descendant from 5 generations ago of the second governor of Cabell County. And the reason I know Nick is he's the one who told me about the Moscow State University website, Chronologia. And in addition, Nick has been involved with the National Liberty Alliance, and the two of us have been working together. Nick called me just at the moment that I was about to go into the spring meetings at the World Bank and IMF, and it was a good thing he called me because I was absolutely frightened. There was so much writing on what was going to happen, and we had a brief conversation. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So without further ado, I guess the first question I have, Nick, is what is it that you think is the most important thing going on right now?
I think that it seems, I heard this from a commentator, there's many brick walls, but those brick walls are paper thin. And it just seems your audience is growing. The handful of people that I talk to, it seems like people know something's up. I can't say that everybody is as aware as they should be, but it does seem that the general subconscious of everybody I talk to knows what's up. And we have this major presidential election happening, and it seems like a majority of the people, nobody is happy with anybody who's running for president right now, and they may have an idea of who they like, but deep down I think they really know that there's something up. And it's hard to say. What I'm trying to say is I think people need to be open to what is truth in this world, in this country, in this world, and not just in this world, but in your towns. I mean, I could bring up something. I'm in Huntington, West Virginia. The very first page of the City of Huntington Charter, you can go online and look at your own municipal charter. Ours was ratified, it was approved in 1987, I believe, and the very first line says, the inhabitants of the city of Huntington, blah, 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 shall remain a corporation. So if I live in Huntington and as an inhabitant of Huntington, I am a corporation, and it says it right there on the very first line of the charter. I don't know about that.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how you found out about this website from Moscow State University?
Sure. I think the best thing is to show, because you weren't aware that it was actually books, and this is book 1 and 2, and there are 5 more, so I only have the first 2, and mine's a bit used. It's not just the website. He put up the website because his name is Anatoly Fomenko. I've never met the professor, but I've emailed him. He corresponded back, and he seems very down to earth, if we can say that. His research is actually very technical. I'm not a mathematician, but I am fascinated by mathematics, but by no means am I a mathematician. And you probably won't be able to see much of this, but the book is full of illustrations, and then later on there's maps, ancient maps, maps of from the Renaissance and Middle Ages. Later on are the graphs, and you can just see how technical. I mean, this is not somebody writing fiction in their basement hoping that they're going to sell books. This is a serious scholar who is doing legitimate scientific work. The name is History, Fiction, or Science, and the reason that has the title Fiction or Science is because it really is a science. Its chronology is the science.
And for me, the takeaway from this is that everybody is on board, everybody is responsible, because we're all living in this planet, and it's all up to each individual one of us. And some of us are not really tuned in to what's going on. We're all facing the same fate. We're all joined together in the same fate. If there's a World War III, we're all going to be affected by that, and some of us are doing more than others. And I would say that we're really all dependent on Nick, and Nick has been pulling us through. That was my experience when you called me, because it's a very lonely business when you're standing in for everybody and you're responsible for everybody, and you're not sure you're going to manage to do what needs to be done for everybody. And it's always a wonderful experience to know that, no, I'm not alone. I'm getting all the help I need. And Nick has certainly been giving me a lot of help.
I appreciate that. Well, it's reciprocal and mutual, and I think the people who are watching this who want to do something, they need to say a prayer about it. I know we have a lot of different people in the audience, but if you say prayers about it, because I really believe that you will find what you need to do within you. The Lord will show you through yourself. So I know you're going to head out and talk to Betsy, if we could say that, Betsy Banfield Malone. Sorry.
Yes.
Anyways,
Betsy Banfield Malone.
Yeah, the collective consciousness, and it's not a fairy tale. They unfortunately don't teach enough of it in our educational system, and I really believe every single one of us has a relationship with the spiritual. So it's something that you are going to find in yourself. There's something I did want to say is that I believe this: everybody is an expert in something. I'm a teacher. You have to constantly encourage young ones. You may not be the expert in topic A, but you will be an expert somewhere along something in your life. You are the best at that in your life. Something in your life, you're the best, better than anybody else at something. And I would even venture to say more than one thing. Don't set your bar too low. There might be more than one thing that you're the best at, more than anybody else in the world. But the flip side of that coin is there are many things that you are by far not the best at in the world. And I think that is where in our lives we need to work on those things. We're not the best. Bring that up. Before we can move this forward, we have to bring this one up so that we can move, we can be a balanced living person. And that's what I want to say about that.
Thanks, Nick.
And then the following day, I drove to Louisville, Kentucky, and interviewed Betsy Malone. Betsy Malone has a blog which is frequently posted on my Twitter account. What she put up the last time was the Constitution of 1871. She had done the research and found where it was. Anytime that I have been asked where it was, I had to punt. I didn't know where to find it, but Betsy did a lot of serious research and found it for us. Once I had that Constitution, I was able to reject it and say that the United States is interregnum, that Constitution is not valid. On the November 3rd segment of the DC TV series, we met Betsy Banfield, and she spoke to us about the International Association for Near-Death Studies. On Valentine's Day, Betsy wrote about the collective unconscious and told us to know thyself.
Good morning, and I'm here with Karen Hudez this morning. She asked me to do an interview with her last week, and she is here in Louisville with me this morning. I'd like to go over one of the issues that we brought up in a blog about who controls the world. And actually what we really need to talk about is who's in power. Power seems to be the key word when we just look at the politics and what's going on in our world. So that's what I'm really going to cover today. I put some notes down. First, we'll look at the power structure, and then we'll look at power in numbers. For the power structure, I made a little diagram to show you what the natural structure of power should be. And as you can see, we start with God. God creates humanity. Humanity creates the constitutions. The constitutions create our governments, and the governments create corporations. I noted on the bottom, this is the order of service for the good of all. The corporations should be serving us. This is the natural order of power and how it should be. And you probably don't see this in your world. What you actually see is this other diagram of a pyramid, which is the corporation at the top. The corporation is incorporating governments, as we noted in the constitutional study. And the constitutions are meant to help humanity be incorporated. And the service of fictional entities that allow the corporation to enslave us, basically control us. That's the power structure that we see, but it's not necessarily reality. And obviously they take God out of it, and there is no order. So what I'd like to try to explain as far as how the structure is really an illusion of what you see, and how you can see what's really going on, the unseen, is to take a look at the power in numbers. And the power in numbers has been explained through mathematics. For instance, the other night I was watching a show on Showtime called Imitation Game, where a group of mathematicians broke the Enigma code in World War II to win the war. Now, obviously, they didn't do this instantly. They had patience and they had strategy to overcome what was considered an evil force in the world. The mathematicians were able to use the code breaking method to slow down the war, stop the war, and stop the evil. So I see this happening with the people being the code breakers, the actual ability to figure out the matrix. Like I was mentioning in a blog earlier about the United States constitutional study, how that's brought forward. The people have been doing this for years now. They've been very patient. They've been unveiling many things that we have not seen in our everyday life, because the media has blocked that from our view. And what We are the power in numbers, and we have to understand this. One of the things that that Karen has presented to us is the power transition model, and I'm bringing that up because this is another group of mathematicians that have basically shown us through something solid, mathematics, that we have a 90 to 95% likelihood to go back to the rule of law. And I'll take you back to the rule of law is really this principle here, that we are going by our God-given rights. And the power is going from this pyramid versus the other pyramid that we see in our world today. So the rule of law versus the network of global corporate control, the corporate control that we talk about in the blogs, is actually not in power. It is losing power, and that's what the transition is all about. It's transitioning this paradigm, this pyramid, from one system of unbelief to a reality. And I mentioned the collective unconscious early on in a lot of my blogs and talking with Karen. And I'm presenting to you how this actually occurs in our world, in our everyday world, how the spirit is moving. It is moving the people as a group to become more aware. And you can see this in the media, but it's not necessarily something that your perspective would key into. For instance, the other night I watched a special on Russell Brand. He, of course, everybody knows that he divorced Katy Perry, and he's now more into the spiritual. He's more into explaining how the government is actually trying to harm you. So he's actually connecting to these principles that I'm telling you about. So when I'm bringing all this out, it's to connect the dots that the people are actually all around the world in different positions, opening up their mind, their perspectives to see the reality of what really goes on. And I brought up the imitation game because that actually shows you throughout history we have gone through many power transitions. And this particular power transition is a little bit higher in the level that the people are connecting to it. Our consciousness is moving way beyond where it's ever been before. And you can see that all around you when your perspective is keyed into the notion that, actually there is something moving, something connecting us all, this collective unconscious that is bringing us up toward good, obviously. So the name that we put on it is the rule of law. So the coalition is every one of us. The coalition is all of us. We are the dots. I brought a little picture to show how that can change the structure. When you know that you are a part of each and every little dot that's connecting to make a beautiful picture, a connecting of a better structure than what we have today. What you see as unreality. And this transition is bringing us together. The internet is bringing us together. We're allowed to sit here and talk about this. And we know that every area of our world is coming together with this. Just look at Brazil. The people in Brazil are so passionate in bringing their God-given rights back to their country. They're putting out the corruption. And they're standing up. I mean, this is happening around the world. All people are feeling this unconscious movement toward good, toward the actual power structure that we need to be in. So I would say that what humanity really is wanting is to correct itself. We're correcting the negative, unwanted unrealities that we see in our environment. And just like Karen's interview with Nick, he is another piece to that puzzle. I got to watch his interview earlier, and I was really impressed with his ability to show how unique we are. Each individual has a unique position to make the whole structure a beautiful picture. And that is so true. I mean, we can't help but understand that we really are connected. We are making this movement. And although it's unseen, we use mathematics to prove it. And that's why Karen has often put out the power transition model for people to see. But what you need to connect with is the power is transitioning to a good thing. And we really need to connect with that. Well, we started with the question, who controls the world? And I guess my point in this interview is we the people have the power. We have the control. And I'll just finish up with a little quote that I got from Father David. Now that we are going to start doing the things we have been talking about and dreaming of. Why? Because we are spirit-driven people, and we will win. Thank you.
I talked about how we're going to be with each other during the global currency reset. When you talk about something, you go to the heart of the matter. The heart is identified with the very soul of the individual. Tantra Yoga teaches that the heart of man and the heart of the world are a single heart. At the end of the teleprompter for that session, Betsy had a wonderful piece where she talked about how we're all united. The best part about visiting with Betsy was our brainstorming session that we did. Betsy was telling me she had an idea that there was something waiting to be hung. And I was thinking about that. And I decided what needs to be hung is the network of global corporate control. And then I had to think about exactly how we were going to accomplish that. And I realized we have these Treaty of Versailles bonds worth $2 quadrillion. And the point is, I've been trying to go back into the World Bank, but I actually, if I went into the Fed, I could hang the Fed, because the Fed is underwater, and as one of the 7 individuals who's allowed to see, they're called the gray screens. You go and you look to see what the bank statements are. I can go into the Fed and look at the gray screens of the Fed, and I can also look at the gray screens of the global debt facility, and we can see the assets of the global debt facility, including the $2 quadrillion that the network of global corporate control owes us. Now, I've been asked any number of times to go in front of the gray screens because the crooks want to steal humanity's assets. So I wouldn't go into the Fed, allowing the Fed to steal everybody's assets. I would ask for the National Guard to come with me to the Adjutants General. When I spoke to Maryland's Adjutant General's office, I was told that she wasn't there, but her office told me actually I had mispronounced the word adjutant. I had said adjutant, and it's adjutant. But you see, I'm given a lot of instruction, I'm giving a lot of help, and we are absolutely in the very center of the global currency reset now with what is going on. When I spoke to the chief editor of TASS and told him that the people in the United States were not in agreement that Russia was a threat, we were not in agreement with the sanctions. This is all concocted by the network of global corporate control, which is now bankrupt, and we're going to hang the network of global corporate control monetarily, and the entire world is going to be free of that scourge of interest on country debt. There is no such thing as country debt, because the network of global corporate control owes us much more than the countries owe them. But there are a lot of details that need to be worked out, and they're not going to be worked out by another second network of global corporate control in their place. There's a lot of criticism about how the World Bank and IMF are there to oppress the world. And as we've seen in this series, the Bretton Woods institutions were created as a co-op and a decision-making body to decide what to do with the world's wealth when it came out. And the world's wealth is now coming out. And what we're doing with it is we're putting the gold inside the currencies. So when people criticize and say the governments are just going to steal the money from the people, no, we're going to be very careful and make sure that the gold stays in the currency. A lot of people say, well, how are you going to value the gold? That's not going to be as difficult as all that, because gold doesn't change prices. When you see the price of gold changing, what's actually happening is the paper currency is getting less valuable. So if you look at the price of a basket of goods and services over the years in different currencies, you can get a very accurate picture of what the proper price is of the gold. But we're not going to just hurry up and put the gold in the currencies, because we're going to have a difficult, complicated transition, because all of these companies that have gotten used to running ramshot over people, they're going to have to be reined in, and the people that are on the top of this network are not going to stay there, but they're not going to be punished. If we punish them, they're not going to leave peacefully, and this global currency reset is going to be peaceful. The way we're going to manage this is all of the people are going to be dealing with each other first to find out what's going on. I would say that what we actually know is maybe not even half of what we need to know. It's going to take a long time for us to find out what is real and what is fake. It's going to take quite some time before we've got our bearings. And I think the biggest danger that we have now is for the people who are just suddenly coming to terms with what the actual state of the world is. They're disgruntled. They've been lied to. And we are going to have a very important task for the people who have been watching this series and are not blindsided to bringing the others on board. I've been discussing with the National Liberty Alliance whether their people would want to help as well, because we do want this transition to be as peaceful as possible. The only thing that has to happen quickly is replacing this toxic paper currency. And what I have said in the previous week is that since it's very clear that the United States currency is sound, the United States currency is not Federal Reserve notes, and the most important currencies are the local currencies, which is in your hands. It's in your neighborhoods that you're going to be issuing these currencies. It's going to be your villages, it's going to be your businesses that are going to be selling their goods and services based on this local currency. So there is a lot of work to be done in making this transition. I think it's going to be fun. I can tell you it was a lot of fun meeting Betsy and meeting Nick. I had just been dealing with them from a distance, and dealing with people face to face is something quite different. Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. After my interview with Nick Blaine, Nick copied me in on an email to Professor Anatoly Fomenko of Moscow State University, who developed the chronologia. And now we have our ancient history back. Betsy is the one who gave me the copy of the Second Secret Constitution that replaced our Constitution of 1789 and which has placed the United States into interregnum. By popular demand, we're getting to know who is helping the global debt facility with the global currency reset that we are now in the middle of. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis.